Hey guys, today we're kicking old school. We have a throwback to my PT Theros deck, and granted, in that Pro Tour I got crushed pretty badly, but I think a lot of that was misunderstanding of what the format was going to look like, and just, you know, general stupidity as far as like how to play with Thoughtseize. Like, there were some decks where I kept it in when I shouldn't have, and some decks where I sided out when I should have, partly because of the round before that. And overall, I liked the deck a lot, but I didn't have a lot of time to put into it, and I thought Anger of the Gods was going to be really good, and that stretched my mana base and just kind of made my main deck horrid. So we kind of got to this place by looking at the various devotion decks and seeing what color we wanted to splash, if any, and I started looking at Black-Red Devotion from my article last week or 2 weeks ago, depending on when this goes up, and I like that a lot just because cards like Mizzium Mortars gave you kind of like a Wrath effect in the mid-game. You had Rakdos' Return to punish like the Jund Monsters decks that side into a bunch of removal, and there are some games in the mirror match where, like, you know, you Thoughtseize them, take their one threat, and they sit on 3 removal spells, and then, you know, you don't even have any creatures at that point, and you just have to draw really well to be able to get through all their removal. So I like that Rakdos' Return just like clears out their entire hand, gives you another way to fight a Planeswalker. So like against Jund Monsters, they might play a Xenagos, make a 2/2, and you just get to like return most of their hand and kill their Xenagos. So I like the red a lot, and after playing with it a little bit, it's just like, you know, Grey Merchant is either really good or really underwhelming, and most of the time it's underwhelming. You know, the format is sped up. A lot of the decks have gotten new cards, and these black decks really haven't gotten a lot of new stuff. So Grey Merchant is kind of necessary evil in those decks, but instead I decided to go with a heavier red component, play some Stormbreath Dragons, and another like byproduct of the format speeding up is that I want to go back to Read the Bones instead of Underworld Connections. Like, you can't really afford to play these just like draw-go attrition games and like try and hope to kill like every single threat that they play. Like, you really need to just use your removal spells to keep your opponent off balance, kind of just like stop what they're trying to do and kill them with a big threat. So for the Pro Tour, I had Demon and Stormbreath Dragon, and, you know, those are probably the 2 best threats. You know, they're like pretty cheap, hit really hard, and in the case of Stormbreath Dragon, they're like pretty difficult to remove. Like, you know, Demon doesn't die to burn or whatever either, so you need like a very specific answer to beat either one of these, and it is very rare that something kills both of them. So the thing that I like now, since you know, it's been a while, people have just been like, you know, upgrading their decks and like utilizing more technology, is Pack Rat. And like, granted, Pack Rat is kind of old technology. It showed up at that PT as like a 2 of in one of the top 8 decks, but like quickly moved to a 4 of. And I think that was kind of the card I was missing too. And I probably wouldn't have like even tried this card at all, like regardless of whether or not Anger was in my main deck or not. But I am glad that I have access to this now. So I have like a threat that is pretty reasonable on turn 2 and on turn 5. And that's basically just like what you want out of a Magic card. Like, you want something that is good when you draw it early and good when you draw it late, and Pack Rat is exactly that. So other than that, we have 26 lands, want to hit our land drops every turn. Especially with this deck, we have a slightly higher top end with Stormbreath Dragon, and it's like kind of off color too, so you need a few more lands to make your mana better. And then we also have Rakdos' Return, and a lot of people didn't like it that I didn't have this in my red devotion deck that was splashing black, and a lot of that was just like, well, you know, you're not trying to make your land drops every turn. You very much want to play like a creature every turn, and then if you have this Rakdos' Return in your hand, it just kind of like clogs down your draw and stuff. Whereas in this deck, like, Rakdos' Return is basically what you're building to. So I've Thoughtseize, that's kind of a given. I also have 2 Duress, and I don't think that's that bad. Like, right now, Duress is pretty good against most decks. Like, even something like Mono Blue Devotion, where their deck is mostly creatures, like, the cards that threaten you are definitely the non-creature ones, you know? Like, you have most of their creatures locked down with removal, so you really need to stop, like, their Hall of Triumph or their Biden of Thassa, stuff like that. And against Jund Monsters, they have a bunch of Planeswalkers, they have a bunch of removal, and if you can strip their 1 removal spell and then play a demon, like, that demon is going to own the board. So post-board, you know, Duress comes out in a lot of places because you have like more specialized cards. But I think Duress is a fine main deck card. And one of the reasons that I initially liked this deck a lot was because of the Rakdos Key Runes and the fact that my Pro Tour deck had Thoughtseize and Shock. So you could play a Key Rune on turn 3 and then still use it to either, play a discard spell or play a removal spell. And we still kind of have that. I have a Magma Spray and another one on the sideboard. But I have 6 discard spells. So the Key Runes are great. They accelerate you. They fix your mana. They provide another threat for the mid game. And I really hope that I get to play against like a black deck and a blue-white control deck, and just kind of show you guys how good the Key Runes can be in those matchups. So other than that, yeah, I got some Mortars. Not playing Devour Flesh or Bile Blight just because Mortars kind of covers your bases against both of those. So like if they get a Pack Rat that's out of control, you have Mortars to answer it. Or if they have a Blood Baron and Viscopa, you have Mortars to answer it. Other than that, I have some ultimate prices. And, you might be tempted to just like max on Dreadbore, right? Like it just kills everything, but that's not really true. Like Price kills Stormbreath Dragon the turn they cast it. It kills Master Waves, which Dreadbore does not do. So it is very helpful to diversify your removal spells and not just play 4 of like the quote-unquote best one. Other than that, main deck's pretty solid. We have Temple of Malice, which is a big upgrade over the Guild Gates I played, although I'm still playing 1 Guild Gate just to kind of fix the mana. I have 5 Mountains, which could be 4, and hopefully that doesn't bite me. Other than that, like 9 Swamps, definitely 4 Mutavaults, one of the best cards in the deck, attacks Planeswalkers, gives you an additional threat. And then for the sideboard, I usually play 2 Drowning Sorrows in decks like this, but I have the 3rd one now just because of Tom Ross's deck, and it's starting to show up a decent amount on Magic Online, and I wanted to kind of hedge against that. And plus Drown is like pretty serviceable against things like Master Waves, so it's not like this card is just in your sideboard for that one matchup. We have some more Doomblades against, again, Master Waves and the Monsters decks. More Duresses. So my plan against Burn is to keep in 8 discard spells, including Thoughtseize. And the plan there is to just take their Searing Blood or Chain to the Rocks and hopefully use that to ride like a Pack Rat or a Desecration Demon. And like you can't really play a long game against them, like you definitely have to be putting pressure on them. And I think using the discard spells to protect your threats is the best way to do that. Plus, like Duress against control decks and all that. And it's very good. A couple Hammer Perforoses. One of the reasons I wanted to have red in this, black mid-range deck, just because Hammer is one of the best threats against the other black decks and the blue-white decks. And the mana is a little rough, but there's like very few things that do what Hammer does. And that's just like provide a steady stream of threats in addition to doing something on its own. So like, you play this in a Desecration Demon, for example, like they are in a world of trouble. If they take 6 that turn, the next turn they have to kill your demon, and then you can just start hitting them with 3/3s. So Hammer's very, very good. And Lightbane Zombie for Jund Monsters, and it actually comes in against blue-white decks too, just because it's a reasonable threat against them, and I think that's what you need to be doing. Like I think with the black-green decks, you can use Abrupt Decay and Golgari Charm and like kill all their detention spheres and outdraw them with Underworld connections, but you just kill them eventually in that deck. Like you just strip their hand completely, and eventually you'll play like a demon or a Pack Rat or something and ride that to victory, but that is definitely not what this deck wants to be doing. Like this deck is very much a beatdown deck in those matchups. Like incremental damage matters. You're not too concerned about them getting a little card advantage. Like I think if I'm playing the black-green deck, like my Duresses are going to be targeting the Sphinx's Revelations, whereas in this deck my Duresses are going to be targeting the removal spells. So having another evasive threat and something that can like pressure Jace, pressure Elspeth is very welcome. Pithing Needle, I like having 1 Needle against decks with Planeswalkers. So like against Jund Monsters, you might see their hand and see that they have like a Domri that's about to come down, and then you can preemptively Needle that, and then you don't have to deal with it. Like if every time they play a Planeswalker they get value out of it and then you kill it, you're falling further and further behind. So I like having a Needle. Plus it comes in against control decks. You can preemptively answer Jace or Elspeth. So 1 is pretty good. I wouldn't want any more than that, so I think 1 is the best number. And then I have a second Magma Spray for like kind of Tom Ross's deck, but also just like Chandra's Phoenix, Eidolon of the Great Revel, Voice of Resurgence if we end up playing against something like that. So this is kind of like a Drown in Sorrow-esque card where it's good against the smaller creature decks, but This has its own separate value, just have like being a cheap removal spell and exiling. Then we have another copy of Read the Bones, which I like against the grindier matchups like the blue-white decks and the black devotion decks. So that's it. This is like my second take on this deck. I played it a little bit before this, but not very much. So there might still be some issues, like maybe my removal suite is incorrect, and maybe I have too much removal. I don't know. Like I have 10 main deck, 3 in the sideboard, not counting Drown in Sorrow. So maybe I can shave on that a little bit, maybe cut one of these Doom Blades. I wouldn't mind a third Rakdos' return in the sideboard for the other black midrange decks and the blue-white control decks, but other than that, that's about it. I'm not 100% sure if this deck is, like, better than Devotion decks. Devotion decks certainly have, like their own upsides. They have, like, potential for blowout Grey Merchant draws, and like their mana base is usually rock solid and stuff like that, but I really like the red cards right now, and I want to try a more high impact card over Grey Merchant and Asphodel. So that's it. Let's get to the games.